Hi everyone, we're Gabby,
Karim,
and Jules.
and you're listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Allied to Health.
Last season we took you behind the scenes of some of our mock MMI stations.
So we've talked about the GAMSAT and we've talked about the interviews. So now on to the next step. This season we're talking all things getting ready for med school.
We will be running you through what a day in the life of a medical student looks like, what study techniques to know about, what your career is going to look like, and much more.
So stay tuned and get ready to get med ready.
Hey everyone, it's Gabby here. On this episode of the podcast, I'll be doing a one-on-one interview with the lovely Gianni. Gianni has just finished his first year of medicine at the University of Queensland, but his journey into medicine wasn't exactly a typical one. He got his offer 4 days before he had to move from Melbourne to Queensland to start medical school. It's a pretty hectic one, but it's one that I think a lot of you might relate to, especially if you're finding yourself getting some last-minute med offers this week. So stay tuned and listen to all the good tips that Gianni has. But before we jump in, I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which I am recording this podcast today. That is the Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nations. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which you are on today listening to this episode. If you don't know which land you are on, I highly recommend looking it up and finding out. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and pay that respect to any Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islanders that may be listening today. Hi Gianni, how are you today?
Not too bad. How are you, Gabby?
Good, thank you. Did you just want to start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your med journey?
Okay, no worries. So yeah, my name is Gianni and I'm from Melbourne, and I did my undergrad, a Bachelor of Science at the University of Melbourne. And from there, I ended up getting into the University of Queensland Meds program. And so moved up and I've just finished my first year of Med at Queensland.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit more about your experience getting into med? I know it was a little bit different to your typical journey. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, no worries at all. So my start was actually pretty crazy. So I kind of in my second year of undergrad, decided med's what I want to do. I set the GAMSAT a couple of times, improved my score a bit and thought, let's go for it. I got an interview at Deakin and I don't want to sound too overconfident, but I thought I did pretty well and so had a chance of getting in somewhere in Victoria. But it didn't happen like that. And I didn't get an offer in the first round at all. I'd said, okay, so what am I going to do from here? Planned my honours, ended up getting a summer scholarship. So I got to start doing a fair bit of research during the summer before the next year started. And during that, I think it was the week or 2 weeks before we properly started honours and the week before med started. So actually 4 days before med school started, I got an offer for University of Queensland. And well, it was a bit crazy because I was sitting in lab analysing results and I just got this email. And so first thing I'm on the phone to mum, what should I do now? Because my whole world kind of changed in a matter of minutes. And I initially kind of knew I had to say yes because it's what I really wanted to do, and talked to my lab supervisors, got a bit of advice because I kind of really trusted them by that point. And I think everyone was kind of saying you really have to do this because you'll kick yourself if you don't. And so decided to move up. And it was really crazy. So first few weeks was living in an Airbnb. I actually knew no one in Brisbane moving up. So it was kind of in the middle of nowhere, just myself in the city. And got in touch with a few people who were looking for a place through my girlfriend at studying med at Melbourne, who just happened to know someone whose partner was at UQ. Ended up finding a house with them, sleeping on an air mattress for a few days while we're starting semester. And so it's a bit crazy. You're starting an intense course in a city you've never been to with no one you really know, trying to furnish a house while you're a 9 to 5 class. It was a bit ridiculous. Really happy that I took that opportunity and have made the most of it so far.
Yeah, that's just crazy to me. I am very strict with scheduling and organization, and that would just rock me to the core of that experience. How did you find it? What was the most sort of confronting part of that experience, do you think?
I think really the short time frame of it all, because just 4 days between getting the offer and starting, and I had to accept it within 2 days. So I didn't really get a chance to think about what's happening. And so I think what was most confronting was just kind of after deciding that I was going to go there, kind of realizing, oh, wait, this is 4 years away from home in like a place that I've never been before. But after that initial, like, damn, what have I done? I think getting like to my feet once we had a place, once we like, got into the routine of studying and that, it all like kind of fell into place, especially with meeting new people and finding like, a group that you get along with. It starts becoming like less of a place that you've just been put into and more of a home. And so, yeah.
Yeah. You sort of didn't really have time to process it emotionally first. You just jumped straight in.
Yeah, not really, especially because like as you'd know, when you're starting med, you have to do like your CPR, get all these vaccinations, and I just had 4 days to organize all this stuff, and so it was really just by the time I realized, wait, I'm in Brisbane now, it was like almost a couple of weeks in. Yeah.
Yeah, that is just insane. I didn't even think about that. There's lots of sort of forms that you have to complete and get signed off on, and even like working with children's check, police check. I think all that's involved. You did really well getting that done in 4 days.
Yeah, it was a bit of a struggle, and some of it I had to manage to, go through student services. Please give me extensions on a lot of this, and we all made it work. But yeah.
Yeah. Lots of our listeners like to ask questions about logistics, like how does this actually work? So you lived in an Airbnb for a little bit first before finding a place, but how did you manage finding a house in a city that you hadn't even lived in before?
Yeah, so it was pretty like interesting because as well, like I hadn't moved out of house until like my house with my parents until that point too. So I really had no idea what the go is with, rental applications and things like that. And so I was lucky. So Emily, my girlfriend, who was on the podcast, managed to put me in touch with someone else who was looking for a house with a few other people doing med. And so we kind of just joined together and look at realestate.com, like other things like that. And you go through this process of like getting all your bank statements, your things, your ID, and all of these, like trying to do all these house applications, because it's pretty common. Like I didn't really realize it until doing it myself that you get knocked back a lot before you find a place that will accept you. And that took up a lot of time while we're trying to get on our feet studying as well. But yeah, it's more involved than what you think. So if you're looking for a house or someone's moving out in or soon, I suggest starting as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure. It is one of those really hard processes that you don't realize how hard it is until you try and you're like, this is tough. And they turn back students, like university students, so often. So yeah, that is really great advice. And then just changing the pace a little bit. This year, well, last year now, especially, was quite a tough year with border closures and things like that. And your family, friends and partner all live in Victoria. How did you sort of manage that, especially because you didn't really get time to process it before jumping over? How did you deal with that isolation as well?
Well, so yeah, it was, I think I was kind of lucky with how it worked out because I was up there for maybe 6 to 8 weeks before, the first kind of wave of COVID hit. And when everything went online, I actually managed to come back to Victoria and got to study for a fair bit with my family and my partner back at home, which was great. But then the second wave of COVID, I think I was away from home for about 6 months and just staying in Queensland, not being able to see family. And so it was definitely really hard. But I think finding people that you really get along with and essentially making like, a new family out of your friends back up in Queensland. Because at the start, you do feel isolated, but I think there's a lot more people in the same situation than you first realize. And so a lot of my friends are from like different states or international. And so they're all going through the same thing. And it makes it a lot easier to find people who like, want to spend time with you because like they're not really able to go see their family too and things like that. So even though it might seem really lonely, there's definitely people out there who are in the same situation or similar situations, even if it doesn't always seem like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this year we've sort of learnt how to really rely on other people that we normally wouldn't be able to, or that we normally wouldn't rely on. But yeah, it might continue this year as well. So anyone listening who might be moving interstate for medicine and things like that, keep in touch with your family as much as you can. We are very blessed to live in a country where we have, internet access and so much technology that they're just a call away, but also don't be afraid to reach out and make friends. It's easier to make friends in med school than people think, I think.
Definitely, because especially at the start, everyone wants to make friends. It's, exciting. You're all doing something new together. And so, yeah, definitely be on the lookout.
Yeah, definitely. You make a little family at your university as well. Yeah. And for any listeners that are listening to this episode and they've just got a last minute offer as well, and they're just, trying to get everything done before they move to wherever they have to move to study medicine, what's some advice that you'd give to them?
I think like one of the main things is just making sure you don't shy away from opportunities just because of change. Like it's going to be a big difference, and especially at the start when you're looking for somewhere to live, you're getting used to being in a different city. Maybe it's moving out of home for the first time, or even just not knowing many people around you. It's going to be like difficult, and there's no other word for it at the start. But you just push through, because once you start making new friends, getting used to like where you are, you're going to be able to appreciate like the things that are available there that might not be so at your home. So especially after you really throw yourself into it, you're going to find yourself like growing in ways you never thought you would. Yeah,
exactly. I think med's one of those courses that you're going to grow no matter what, but if you have the chance to sort of reach out and do something completely different, like jump to a different state and experience the best beaches ever compared to Melbourne as well, it's like living in paradise, then do it. Yeah, I think that's some great advice.
Yeah, and as well, something else that I found really helped me was the moving up. I knew I didn't really know many people, so I saw some opportunities with the student societies, and I thought, like, why not? This is going to be awesome to meet some new people. I ended up getting the first year representative position for the Med Society, which was great because like you just get to meet a lot of people and find out more about how things work in medicine, and get to meet new people and like talk to the teachers and professors who are obviously organizing a lot of things. So for someone with not much of a background, I think trying to get involved in some way, even though it might seem a bit intimidating, can be really good to just get your head around what's happening and meet so many new people, which is awesome too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. And there's so many clubs and societies for anything, anything that you can imagine, they've got a club for it. So yeah, definitely find which one suits you best and jump right in. Yeah.
Great advice.
Yeah. And in saying that, you're the first guest that we've had on our podcast from the University of Queensland. We give a lot of sort of advice about what it's like to study med at Uni Melb, but it'd be great to hear about the other side. So what's sort of like a typical day in the life at UQ like, and what's the best thing about studying in Queensland?
Well, so a typical day generally starts with like lectures at 8 a.m. like every morning, which at the start, not the best getting up that early, but you get used to it. And so you have a couple of hours of lectures in the morning, and then usually a couple of hours of like a break before your, like depends what tutorial you might have that day, but a few hours of tutes, and then maybe another class in the afternoon or so. So generally you do have pretty long days. Almost every day is kind of like 8 to 3 or 4 with a few hours of breaks in there. And so it's definitely more hours than say undergrad was, but you get used to it. And I think what I really liked about UQ was that there was definitely like more than enough resources given to us. So like if you wanted to know anything about anything, like you can find it with what they give you, which I think was great. But one thing which I have noticed going into medicine, and I'm sure it's the same at Uni Melb, is it's really hard to gauge how much you're expected to know at any point. Because they throw so much information at you. It's really becomes like a skill to pick out what's like, there's a saying, you'll get to know a lot in high yield. Yeah. And so being able to like pick what parts from what lectures are worth remembering and what's a bit like, yeah, that'll come to me next year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's something we tried to sort of touch on in our episode as well. But it's something that I think you just have to figure out as you go along. It's really hard. And it's hard to step away from that undergrad mindset as well of sort of just memorizing so many things for your exams to get the best marks. You're really learning to practice and you're learning for your career. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind as well and to not put too much pressure on yourself to know everything.
Yeah, for sure. And especially I was lucky enough to have a month of placement at the end of my year. Thankfully didn't get cancelled. And just once you get into that mindset and actually get to see like what people do in real life, you realize a lot of those tiny details that people at some point or another really like harp on are not very important at all. Like knowing the big picture and how to fit things together, like conceptually versus tiny details that you realistically can Google on the job. Like that's a big thing to, keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is really great advice and great to hear from someone who's had a bit of clinical experience as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, Gianni. You provided some really great information that I think students are going to really appreciate. If they have any other questions or want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch?
So my email is giannifafali@gmail.com. Hopefully Gabby might have my name spelled somewhere there. And just feel free to send me an email and I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep. I'll pop it all in the show notes so they can just copy and paste it in and send you an email. But again, thank you so much. And we're dropping this episode right at the time where students might be sort of getting those last minute offers. So hopefully it's helped a few students. Feel free to reach out to Gianni for any questions, or Allied to Health is always there as well. Thanks, Gianni.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Allied to Health. Please like, share, and subscribe to help spread the word about our podcast. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So send us an email or message on Facebook. All of our links are in the show notes. Thanks. We'll see you next time.